Thank you. Thanks, and now that I can see you, I can actually recognize you for questions if you have any, so. Yeah.
So almost 70% of the populace want school choice. So why aren't our political leaders addressing this need of the people?
Well, I think, as usual, many political leaders are trailing indicators. When I first started out in the school choice movement, we had to fight not only the teachers' unions, liberal organizations, the ACLU, the NAACP, but we had to fight middle-class resistance to school choice also, because the dominant theme was, we'll destroy our public schools if we have school choice. And in fact, the 4 dissenters in the United States Supreme Court, I still can't believe it to this day. If you really want to laugh, read the dissenting opinion, but it's depressing in that there were 4 out of the 9 that did dissent in the case in 2002. They predict with school choice that we would see religious strife at the level of Bosnia and Northern Ireland. Well, we now know that when we have school choice, we have it in enough places in the United States now that not only do we not see religious strife, not only do we not see the death of public schools, we see a strengthening of the public schools. The local district school near my house, the middle school, is surrounded by 3 high-performing charter schools, all of which use the core knowledge curriculum. This is not Common Core, it's core knowledge. And they're doing really, really well. And this year, the middle school, the district school, put up a banner and it said, core knowledge, coming soon. It's amazing. Milton Friedman could have said it. The rules of economics are not suspended at the doors of the schoolhouse. So I think we've taken away the main objection to school choice. We've proven that it's simply not true. The other thing that is helping us now is a demographic change. The people who are becoming parents today are not afraid of choice. They expect choice. They have choices in every aspect of their lives, and they are accustomed to it. So what was presented as a scary idea in the 1990s is now something that people, I think, totally expect. If they have the ability to choose their airlines and to hire an Uber car to drive them somewhere, why the heck shouldn't they have the choices in schools? I think that politicians, and I'm exempting probably every single person in this room who is either in office or running for office, but many elected officials and candidates have not figured that out yet, have not figured out that, that the teachers' union is not the fearsome force that it once was in elections, that they cannot terrify people about school choice anymore. Not only that, Republicans have not yet figured out that school choice is a gateway to the minority community, because there is nothing that would benefit particularly low-income people and low-income minority individuals more than school choice. And once they do, I think that we're going to see real movement. But we have seen tremendous movement, and I hope that it will continue to accelerate. If we get a nominee, almost every person who's thinking of running for president on the Republican side, whether it's Jeb Bush or Scott Walker or Governor Jindal or Paul Ryan, these are heart and soul school choice supporters. They have been there. They have not only talked the talk, but walked the walk. And I think that is going to be a real turning point for education policy in this country. Chris Christie and others as well.
I've been meeting with a lot of people on the Democratic side of the Libertarian nominee for governor here, and absolutely, they want school choice. So all the Republicans Republicans that want to reach out to that side, please do school choice, and you'll get strong followings from the Democratic-leaning side that want something different.
Good, I think good advice.
With the educational savings accounts, what sort of controls did you have to put in place to prevent fraud?
That's a really good question, and we really had to work through that in Arizona very, very carefully. Fortunately, our state treasurer, Doug Ducey, who is now our Republican candidate for governor in Arizona, worked to basically put together this system. And basically, it's a debit card system. For those of you who are familiar with health savings accounts, it works very, very similarly to a health savings account. The first step is that your debit card is restricted to educational expenses. So if you try to use it in a grocery store, for example, it simply won't work for that purchase. The second is that you have to submit to the Department of Public Instruction your receipts for the expenditures that you make with the health savings accounts, and they randomly audit the accounts. So fortunately, so far, we have not had any fraud issues whatsoever. Yeah.
Clint, speaking of Milton Friedman, the polls around the country, and including a recent one here in Georgia, show increasing support for universal school choice for all parents, not just for low-income parents.
Yes.
Why do you think the politicians around the country have only endorsed or passed either means-tested or limited school choice programs, and how do we change that?
That's a really great question. I think that is where you find the broadest coalition. You'll attract often Democratic votes if you start with school choice for low-income kids, for kids in failing schools, or for kids with disabilities. However, one thing about these programs, once you get them started, almost inevitably they grow. I remember going all the way back to the first Milwaukee program. In order to get this passed, they had to put a gate around the program and say, this will not affect the suburbs at all. It's only going to be Milwaukee, and it's only going to be low-income kids. If they hadn't done that, it would never have gotten passed. The program operates for about 5 years, and then all of a sudden you have people in the suburbs clamoring for school choice. They're like, why does Milwaukee have that school choice program and we don't have it? It's the first time I've ever seen suburban envy of something happening educationally in the inner city. And so then it expanded beyond that. And so I've always been an advocate of starting with whatever you can accomplish and going broader. Utah did start with a universal voucher program, and the state wasn't ready for it. The demand, the need wasn't perceived and wasn't deeply understood, and it went to a referendum and went down heavily. I think the dynamics are changing now, and so you probably could, especially in a state like Georgia that has well-known educational issues and challenges throughout the state, not just in the inner city. I think you might be able to go for a bigger prize. Perhaps the example for that is Louisiana, where the recovery district started in New Orleans, but within a year we had a statewide voucher program, which, by the way, I am defending against an attack from the Obama administration, and this actually has ramifications here in Georgia as well. I knew the day would come that someone would dust off a desegregation decree and use it to block a school choice program, and that could happen right here in Georgia as well. Not just vouchers or tax credits, but charters as well. And this is Orwellian. This is mind-numbing that the Justice Department would come in and take a 40-year-old desegregation order and say, you can't have this program because it will alter the racial composition of the public schools, many of which are like 95% black in the parishes that they're fussing about. The point that they overlook is that 90% of the kids in the program are African American. So they are using this desegregation decree to thwart educational opportunities for the very intended beneficiaries of the desegregation decree. Fortunately, the litigation there is going very, very well so far, and I hope to just blast this crazy notion out of the water so it will never rear its ugly head again. But that was kind of a sidelight to your question. I think we are in certain states ready to go for universal school choice.
Clint, thank you for your leadership through the years. In Georgia, our tuition tax credit program is a very popular one. And
Sure
it
is.
seems that if they won't be able to stop it through litigation, and as is reflected in a lot of other states, that the education establishments and teachers unions tend to try to capture these very successful and popular programs through excessive regulation, basically trying to turn them into the public schools that many people are choosing not to send their kids to. How would you recommend that states like Georgia and our legislative bodies resist this temptation to become captured by regulation?
That's a really important question. And going back again to the very first voucher program, the opponents of school vouchers opened up a two-front attack against the Milwaukee program. On the one hand, they filed a lawsuit challenging its constitutionality. On the other, the state superintendent, who I'll never forget this, it was very perverse, is a guy who had two Sesame Street names, Bert Grover. But he was no friend of children. It was like false advertising. He issued a blizzard of regulations designed to sentence the program to death by bureaucratic strangulation. So we had to defend the program on the one hand and attack the regulations on the other, and if we didn't win both of them, the program would be dead. And in fact, no schools signed up for the program because they took one look at the regulations and they said, we can't do this. So that enabled the critics of school choice to turn around and say, see, these private schools don't want to help these kids, right? So the concern that you raise is super, super important. First of all, scholarship tax credits do have the advantage of being one step removed from a direct transfer of state funds to a private school. You have the parents as the intermediary, and I have not seen scholarship tuition programs being subjected to heavy regulation so far. So I think that helps. Beyond that, I think it's important to build into the legislation what I would call a firewall against regulations, and basically say this program does not enlarge the power of the state or the school districts to impose substantive regulations of private schools. Financial regulations, totally, in my opinion, totally fine. An annual audit or whatever, but not substantive regulations. And that is really I think the best inoculation. And the bigger these programs become, then the stronger the beneficiaries are as a political force to resist these sorts of things politically as well. So, so those would be my twin recommendations. And with that, I want to thank you for your warm Georgia welcome, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you so much.